Okay, welcome to Ironsworn, Rime of the Frostmaiden. This is session 0, where I'm going to go through some of the inspiration for doing this series. First of all, we're going to be playing this with the Ironsworn system, which is available of a couple of blog posts by Sly Flourish, where he was talking about random number tables for interesting idea generation and mentioned Ironsworn. So I went and grabbed the PDF, mostly for the random tables. And then as I was reading through it, I was like, oh, this is a really cool system as well as a really interesting setting. It's this kind of northern setting, which I thought was really interesting. And so I started doing some solo play because Ironsworn is designed for solo play or play with a partner without a GM or play with a GM. So I started doing some solo play and it was a lot of fun. So I thought, maybe this is something that could get me into playing some of the D&D modules that I've got that I've been interested in playing, but haven't had the time with my group. I was pretty excited about that. And then I watched a couple of great video series. The first is Me, Myself, and Dadai, who does an Ironsworn solo play. He's a professional voice actor, has a really elaborate setup, very high production quality, which is really cool. That was very inspirational. And then I also watched a series by Dystopian Wasteland. He does an Ironsworn Ravenloft of the original Ravenloft playthrough. And I thought, oh, that looks like fun. And I bet I can do something similar. So this is my attempt to do so. So I'm doing Rime of the Frostmaiden, Icewind Dale. And I chose this module to start because, growing up, winter was very evocative for me. I grew up in Los Angeles and, there's no real weather in LA. It's sunny and 70 pretty much all year round. But we had a house in the mountains, and I remember going up to the mountains and, playing around in the snow. And that was a lot of fun as a child. And then in college, I went to college in Eastern Washington State, and, it snowed not continuously, but pretty regularly from kind of Halloween to March. And that was a new fun experience, very developmental period of my life. So I just have this connection with, the cold and the snow and that sort of thing. I don't want to live there, but it's a fun fantasy to retreat to for me. I also had a lot of fun playing Frostburn in D&D 3.5. They had a whole, rule set for play in cold settings, and we played a campaign in Frostburn and really enjoyed that. I think that Rime of the Frostmaiden is well suited to solo play. It's this kind of frontier, gritty sort of setting that has, some lighthearted elements. But I thought, for a solo person going out into the world, it was a pretty good setting. And the Icewind Dale trilogy by R.A. Salvatore was very evocative for me at the time. And so, yeah, I think Rime of the Frostmaiden is just a good fit for me. I think it'll be interesting. The themes that I'm going to hit on for this game are isolation, obviously, playing solo up in the frozen wastes. There's going to be a lot of time where my character is just on his own. Justice, I think that there's a lot of opportunities for catching people who are doing wrong things. The wasteland of the frozen north is a very forbidding realm, and so I think there's a lot of sort of good evil opportunities there, and also maybe talking about loss. I think having played Ironsworn a bit, there's a lot of opportunity for personal tragedy for the characters and a lot of opportunities for loss and hopefully growth from that. So those are the themes that I'm aiming for. The tone I'm aiming for is, hopefully it'll be fun. Hopefully it'll be fun to watch. It'll be fun to play through. And the mood I'm aiming for is something grim, not super deep, dark, terrible things always happening, but I think that there's something to be said narratively for when your character gets into a hole and then they come out of that in triumph, right? If they're just winning the whole time, that's not a particularly compelling narrative. So Ironsworn is well built to suit that, I think. And so I think holding a grim mood is what I'm going to be aiming for. Helping with the gaming system, I'm going to be using a virtual tabletop called the Augur, which has a really nice Ironsworn compatibility built into it. I looked at Roll20, which also has some nice capabilities, but it didn't look as slick as the ones from the Augur. So that's what I'm going to be using for the game. I'm going to have a couple of house rules. One is there's a move called Secure an Advantage, which in later versions of the game is modified to what I'm going to be using. And then normally you can't increase your character's attributes, which, you know, in D&D are like strength, dexterity, constitution, etc. In Ironsworn, there are things like heart and shadow and wits. Normally you can't increase those, but my house rule is going to be, since I am playing alone, and Rime of the Frostmaiden assumes that you're going to be leveling up. Leveling doesn't really work the same in Ironsworn. So if I'm going to be trying to tackle the challenges for later on in Rime of the Frostmaiden, that's going to be tough if my character can't get stronger, better, faster. So I'm going to allow him to spend 10 experience points to up one of his attributes up to a maximum of there's different arrays. There's like a tough array that I'm going to use. So that's my plan for modifications to the rule system. We'll see as things go along. I might make some changes as well. And then lines and veils, lines that I'm not going to cover at all are sexual violence. And then veils are things that maybe will happen sort of off screen, in-character intimate words or contact, torture, racism, sex work, extreme levels of body horror. And then a lot of uncomfortable topics in Rime of the Frostmaiden. Like I said, it is kind of grim, dark. There's some horror elements. So darkness, deadly cold, betrayal, paranoia, murder, incest, isolation, cannibalism, mental assault. Ritual sacrifice is a big part of the setting. Parasitic monsters, child endangerment, and violence towards animals. There's a lot of animals that are in the world that are given some degree of sentience that, you know, you have to fight because they're evil, apparently. So that's the kind of safety that we're going to be looking at. So let's start with character creation. So I'm going to go ahead and open the augur here. In the augur, you can customize the appearance of your character, etc. That's not a lot of fun for me, so I just did a very simple appearance build. So looking here, so we got to imagine this character. So I named it Carl Slemeni, and I like to start with, you know, who the character is first. So I think I'm going to have him start out in the town of Lonelywood, because Lonelywood, from the original Crystal Shard book, is where Regis lived. It was this tiny little town on the shore that focused on knucklehead trout carving. And I don't know, it just seems kind of a neat, evocative, remote place to start the game. So he grew up in Lonelywood, and I think he grew up in Lonelywood because his father was on the run from someone. We don't really know yet. Hopefully that'll come out as the gameplay progresses. But his father was on the run. He met a local woman. They had a couple of children. So he has a sister, but his mother died when he was very young. So I think his sister is older than him, and then he came along, and then his mother died maybe when he was like 2, 3, 4, or something like that. Things that have happened lately is his father disappeared about a year ago. And Carl, I'm thinking, is like somewhere in mid-teens, maybe 13, 14, 15, something like that. Just getting to the point where he's going to need to kind of strike out on his own as a adult. So his father disappeared about a year ago, didn't leave a note or anything, but there wasn't a sign of like a struggle. I think that there were some supplies that his father took that made it obvious that he had a planned departure. But obviously this is very hurtful for Carl. You know, he doesn't understand what happened or why. He's worried about his father. You know, I think he and his sister made some inquiries, but I don't think they got very far in that process because they, you know, had to then survive on their own. So his sister disappeared about a week ago. His sister's best friend is Carl's best friend's sister. So there's like a pair of them. So Carl and his best friend, and Carl's sister and her best friend. So his sister disappeared into the woods about a week ago with her friend, and Carl's best friend has been, you know, on him the whole time. Like, we got to go after them. We got to figure out where they are. We got to figure out what happened. And I think Carl is going to be a little bit of a reluctant hero. You know, when you hear advice about making D&D characters, the typical advice is don't make like a lone wolf sort of character, right? Because you're part of a party and you need to be cohesive with them and cooperative. But there is a lot of narratives out there, a lot of stories where you have an orphan, right? I mean, most obvious recent one is Harry Potter, but there are hundreds and hundreds of stories where you have an orphan. So I think Carl is going to be a little bit on his own. and a little bit of a reluctant hero. So he wasn't really wanting to go out into the woods and help his best friend. So we need a call to action for Carl. What is going to rattle him out of his kind of steady state of just like trying to live his life in Lonelywood? And I think that his best friend was trying to get him to come out, and his best friend finally was like, fine, I'm going to go do it. And he took off into the woods, and now no one's seen him. So now I think Carl's going to have to, this is enough of a urge for him to go out in the woods, try to find his best friend, hopefully find his sister, and start him down this path of adventure. So looking at our character creation, these are the statistics on the left side. So we have Iron, Edge, Heart, Shadow, and Wits. And I like the idea of Wits being Carl's main thing. He's not particularly tough. He's a little bit tough, but I think he's mostly a cerebral sort of character. I think, honestly, that's also easier for me to play because I'm kind of play things fairly cerebral. But I think that he is, fairly dexterous. And I think that he's pretty tough. Growing up in Lonelywood, it's certainly a hardy, tough place to grow up. I think he's not super socially adept. Lonelywood's a pretty small town. He didn't have a mom to give him good role model behaviors. I'm not sure how good of a role model his dad was. I think that his family have been loggers. That's one of the major activities in Lonelywood. So I think that, he spent a lot of time out in the woods. And so I think that his heart, which is like how you communicate with people and your kind of courage and whatnot, at least right now, is not tough. Hopefully that'll develop as he, goes through and has adventures and learns things about life. And his shadow also is going to be not super high. I don't imagine him being a particularly like sneaky or deceptive character. So those are Carl's attributes. You can also see on this screen, we have his health, which goes up to 5. And then we also have his spirit, which also goes up to 5. Supply, which is a general catch-all for sort of all of the stuff that your character might have on them. It's this nebulous conceptualized thing, so you don't have to keep track of like how many arrows you have left and how many torches and whatnot. Also makes it easy to keep track of money, that you don't really have to worry about money, which I like. And then this is momentum, which is a mechanic in the game to help you be more successful. Now, assets are things that your character knows or has or is able to do that are particularly interesting or special. So you get 3 assets to start. So let's look at the assets. The Augur organizes these as companions first. I don't think I'm going to give him a companion. It's tempting to give him something like a dog, but I think that I kind of want him to start off at least a little more alone and scared. I think having a companion would make him feel a little more maybe kind of comfortable, even setting out into the dark woods around Lonelywood. So I think I'm not going to give him a companion. Paths are basically kind of skills that your character has or expertise that they've developed. So I think that I'm going to give him a couple of paths that I really like and I think are interesting and useful. I really like Wayfinder because it is basically you can, find your way. It makes it easier to travel across the frozen wasteland of Icewind Dale, and I think it'll help him out. So I think we're going to choose Wayfinder. So give that to the character. So that's one asset. I was looking at Wild Blood. I haven't played with Wild Blood, but I think that this could fit as well. Because it relates to woodcraft, tracking, woodland creatures, which are going to come up a lot in Rime of the Frostmaiden. So I think that that's thematically on point and it'll help him survive. So let's give him Wild Blood. I think he does need some kind of combat talent because, since Rime of the Frostmaiden is built on D&D, which has as combat one of its 3 main pillars, I think he's going to need to be at least somewhat combat capable. So if he's not, I'm a little worried he's not going to make it. So Fletcher here. You can make special arrows that give you bonuses, and then when you craft a single arrow, this I can't start with, but I can get eventually. When you craft a single arrow, you can design it for a specific foe and do a ton of damage. So there's a lot of circumstances in Rime of the Frostmaiden where you're up against, one big opponent. And I think this is going to really help him survive. So let's give that to Carl as well. So we got Wayfinder, Wild Blood, and Fletcher, which is great. Now, when we start our character, we also have some bonds to establish. So I think he's going to have a bond to his town, so a bond to Lonelywood. So I'm going to make a note of that. There's a handy note-keeping capability here in the augur. So we're just going to call this bonds so I can keep track of them as we go. So for first bond, I'm going to say to Lonelywood. And then I think he definitely has a bond with his best friend. Now, we don't have a name for this guy yet, so let's come up with a name. So one of the great things about Ironsworn is it has these oracles, which are fantastic random tables to give you inspiration, as well as to give you things like names. So we're going to go ahead and look at a name. Okay, and then in the augur, if you don't like the result, you just click it and it'll give you a new half. Okay, great. I love that. So half is his best friend. So we'll add a bond with half. So that's another bond that we have. And then we can start with up to 3 bonds. I think that I'm going to save the third for now. Maybe we'll come back to that. I'm tempted to have him have a bond with his sister, and that makes sense. I'm a little bit worried that it's not going to come into play for a while. I'm kind of thinking about his sister's disappearance being a little bit like Mulder in the X-Files, that drives a lot of the action, at least through the first 2 chapters. Because there's got to be something that gets him like from town to town pursuing these different adventures. And I'm kind of thinking it's going to be rumors that his sister was spotted here. There could be a clue there, that sort of thing. So I don't want to give him a bond with his sister right now because I don't think it's going to come into play for a while. So I'm just going to save that, that bond and we can add it later. Okay, and then the main mechanism for Ironsworn is swearing vows. You put your hand on a bit of iron and you swear that you're going to do something. So this is also how you get experience. This is really the main like driver mechanic of the game. And I think it's going to fit really well into Rime of the Frostmaiden because each of these little adventures that we get in each of the towns are going to be vows. We'll certainly encounter some other difficulties along the way that will swear vows to right various wrongs. And I think that it gets at the justice theme that I was interested in, where right now Carl's a reluctant hero, but I hope he's going to evolve into being a genuine hero and swearing these vows to help correct wrongs, which to me strikes on that justice theme. So his first vow is going to be find his sister, right? That's going to be his main driving motivation at the start here. So you can give vows and tasks different difficulty levels. Troublesome is the lowest, and then it goes to dangerous, formidable, extreme, and epic. Epic would be, I think epic is going to be once he figures it out, like removing the darkness from Rime of the Frostmaiden, because the premise for Rime of the Frostmaiden is that the goddess Arl is casting this spell that keeps everything dark and cold continuously. So there's no summer, there's no sunlight, it's all dim light for just a few hours during the day, and otherwise it's darkness. So I think that's going to be an epic vow when he gets to that point, because epic vow is it is what it says on the box. But I think finding his sister is going to be formidable for now. I think that as he goes around to the different towns in Icewind Dale and maybe to larger areas outside of that, we'll kind of see how things progress, that he'll be able to make progress on this vow. So he's going to make a vow to find his sister. But then the vow that's going to really motivate him to begin is to find Half, his best friend. So this is what's going to send him off into the forest. He's going to find, I guess, not just find, but he's going to find and help Half. I don't want to say rescue because it's unclear at this point if Half needs rescuing, but he probably needs help since he's been out in the forest for a good day or so. So we're going to make that our current quest. And then go back. So this is Carl. We've got our basic character build here. We can put personality in here. Okay, yeah, let's go ahead and do that. So Carl, calm. I definitely think he's calm. Let's just start with a flat slate. Definitely think he's calm. I think that he's probably a little bit withdrawn. He didn't really have his mom growing up. His dad is, he doesn't know it, but his dad's on the run from something. So I kind of imagine his dad being a little bit taciturn, not unloving, but just a little bit stoic. So I think that kind of translates to Carl, that he's a bit calm. What else is interesting about Carl? Content? He definitely is a reluctant hero. I think that he's content. He had been content with his life. I think he doesn't really want to do anything. So I think I'm going to go ahead and add content. I kind of like that. I think it is nice to have a character trait that's some kind of flaw. The most classic one for heroes is hubris. I don't really like that for Carl. I don't think it fits with him. He's also, he's kind of young, but I kind of imagine him being a little bit young and mostly inexperienced, but not necessarily arrogant. Maybe he's honest, and that gets him into more trouble than it's worth. So I like that. Let's give him honesty. So those are the personality traits that I thought were good for Carl. And once we fulfill Iron Vows, we'll fill in experience down here at the bottom. But at the start, we've got none of that. So that's our character build. So changes that I'm going to make to the base of Rime of the Frostmaiden. A lot of this is inspired by Sly Flourish and his series of blogs and videos about Rime of the Frostmaiden. So as they come up, I will also bring them up. But one of them is that, as written, the speakers of the town, kind of the government officials, are the ones who do sacrifices to the goddess Arl to try to appease her and get the spell lifted off of Icewind Dale. And that's a little bit too dark and may create a little too much problem. So I'm going to take Sly Flourish's recommendation and change that to a religion that call themselves the Children of Arl. Some may consider them a cult, but this religious group are the ones that are encouraging people to do sacrifices, as well as carrying out the sacrifices themselves. I think that it's a little too grim that they're doing human sacrifice. Maybe that'll come in time, but in my conception, the Rime has only been going for about a year. So they just had one summer season that they've missed. I think as written, it's 2 years. And for me, that stretches credibility. Like, could you really survive a 2-year-long winter of minus 40-degree Fahrenheit weather? I'm not sure. I've never lived in Saskatoon over the winter, but it seems like there just wouldn't be enough calories, energy density in the ecosystem to support that life. So I'm going to make it a year. I'm going to say the Children of Arl are the ones doing sacrifice, and the sacrifices are going to be like heat, like they, give up fire or something like that, or food. Haven't gotten to human sacrifice yet, but maybe that'll come up during the game. That could be interesting. I'm also going to cut out chapters that deal with the Durgar and the dragon that they create. I think that they're interesting. They're just not quite in the direction that I'm thinking for the Ironsworn, lone ranger sword going out on the tundra helping people. So we're going to cut those out. And then I'm also going to change the rhyme that Arl is casting, that it's powered by magic from Ithrin, which is this destroyed city that is kind of the capstone to the whole adventure module. So the power is coming from Ithrin, and then she is using that power to cast the spell. So I think that we need to do two things. We need to disrupt that power source, and then we need to get to her to destroy the spell so that she can't just power it up again. So I'm going to switch orientation. I'm going to have Ithrin first, which is the collapsed city and the power source, and then go after Arl, because Arl is this goddess, and that seems like that should be the capstone to the whole thing. Ironsworn, the default setting is pretty low magic, and I really like that. So I'm going to keep that, even though this is, obviously a Dungeons and Dragons module. So there's not going to be like no fireballs, no like healing magic, you know, none of that sort of stuff. There is mysticism in the Ironsworn setting, and I do want to keep that. So there is magic, but it's more, you know, these kind of wise women, you know, these herbalists and ritualists and those kinds of things that are the ones who actually do magic. But there's not going to be any fireballs. But I kind of think that the old magic, like the magic of Ithrin, where this ancient civilization had this flying city that's collapsed, I think that could be like D&D level magic. And that also makes more sense to me because in D&D as written, you have, you know, this old empire, the Netherese Empire, which had, you know, these incredible feats of magic. And I've always been like, yeah, but you got people who can cast Wish. So what beyond that is really incredible. I really like the idea of the default being a low magic setting, and then the old magics were the true magic where you would cast invisibility and fly and teleport and that sort of thing. So I'm going to aim for these videos to be about 20 minutes in duration. My daily walk to and from work is about 20 minutes, and that's when I like to listen to podcasts and videos. So we'll aim for that. And hopefully we'll get through at least all the adventures in Chapter 1 and Chapter 2. I think those are the most interesting for the character that I have created. And then, you know, we'll see if it's fun. We might continue on through the end of the module. So thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed it, and I hope you follow along.